Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today, I am going to be servicing my 2015 Kawasaki Versys 1000 LT. And this bike is a recent purchase for me. It's got 23,000 miles on it, so I'm going to be going over it from front to back. I'm going to be doing my standard service on this bike, and it's the service I do on all bikes, especially when I first get them, to make sure that they are 100% safe and ready for me to ride. All right, enough talk. Let's get to work. Okay, starting at the front of the bike, we're going to look over the front end of the bike, and we're going to need a couple of tools. The first one is a tread depth gauge, and the second one here is a good quality air pressure gauge. And so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to start looking at this tire. And I know that this is a relatively new tire. The first thing that we're going to look at is our tire health. Everything looks good. I'm feeling it. There's no cupping or odd wear to the tire. I'm going to look at my sidewalls on the tire for any dry rot, and I don't see any of that. I don't see where the tire is waxy or hard. And the next thing I'm going to do here is measure the tread depth on the tire. And I've got 4/32 on that measurement. I'm going to measure a opposing tread here. And I've also got just a little bit over 4/32. So the front tire tread is good. There's no dry rot. Everything looks good there. I'm going to look at the valve stem here, and I'm going to check for any dry rot. I don't see any on that. That looks good. And we're going to check our tire pressure and set it to 36 psi. Beautiful. Now, I have previously ridden the bike, so I had already set my tire pressure, but just double checking it here. Next thing we're going to look at are the brakes. I've ridden the bike, it stops very well. There's no warpage in the front braking system. And measuring the front brake pad thickness here, I'm going to look in and check it. It is right at 5/32. So I'm going to just look at all the pads and make sure that they're all about the same, that none of them are wearing funny, and they all look good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the fork seals. I don't see any evidence of oil on there. The forks look good and clean. I'm going to look on the other side as well. That looks great. So we will move on now. Everything here looks like it should. And in riding the bike, I've previously done a test drive. Everything also functions as it should. I don't get any weird wheel hop. I don't get any odd vibrations or knocking sounds in the suspension. It all functions properly. So we're going to move on to the rear wheel. Okay, this is the rear wheel. We'll look at the tire first. And this is a brand new tire. I just installed this one yesterday. Tread depth is 8/32 on this tire. Obviously there's no dry rot on it. It's a brand new tire. I'm going to look at my rear valve stem, and that looks good. I don't have any dry rot on that. I will check my tire pressure. This bike runs 36 psi in the front and 42 in the rear. Beautiful. We're also, while we're in here, we're going to measure the brake pad thickness on the rear. And it's right at 5/32 on the brake pad thickness on the rear pads. So that looks good. We will swing over here to this side of the bike in the rear. And I spent a good amount of time yesterday cleaning the chain. I've been able to move it out of the garage so I can lubricate it properly. So I'm going to spray some lube on there now. But I cleaned the chain. The sprockets look good. They're not all egged, or these teeth aren't like paper thin. Everything looks good there. I set my chain tension at 1 inch, measured right here, and that's at the tightest spot in the chain, so everything looks good there. And I'll do the chain lube in just a second here, but while we're in here, we'll also look at the rear shock, which you can see there. I'll do a little bit closer inspection. And I know it's actually hard to film here, but everything looks great on the rear shock. It doesn't, in riding the bike as well, it functions like it should. It doesn't pogo, or there's no looseness in the suspension. So that is all set up nicely. I'm going to be lubing the chain now. So the chain is lubed. I use the Maxima chain wax here. I like the way that it dries and doesn't fling all over the bike. I know everybody's got an opinion on chain lube, and really feel free to use whatever you like. As long as you're keeping your chain properly adjusted, cleaned on a regular basis, and lubricated, your chain's gonna last a good long time. The next thing we're going to do is look at the controls, and we're going to start right up here and look at the brake fluid level. It's nice and clear. That looks great, and it is right at the top level there, so that's right where we want it. I have set the controls to engage where I want them to, and you can do that on this bike with the little dial here, so that is set. I've also set my throttle play, so there's just a little bit of play, hardly any at all, and then when I open it up, it opens the throttle, and you can adjust that right here. Just has a dial, and you loosen this, and then you can turn the adjustment out to tighten it up. But that has been done. I have also torqued all of these down just to make sure that the handlebars don't rotate. Like, the worst thing in the world is if you'd be under braking or something like that and actually have these handlebars rotate. And the reason I was in there a little earlier was when I got the bike, the handlebars themselves were rotated forward, and I put them back to their stock position and retorqued everything, and so now that is set properly. I've also set my clutch tension here, and so you have just a little play. Again, it's like your throttle. You want just a little play. You don't want it tight so where the first millimeters of travel it's already pulling the clutch in. That's too tight. You want just a little bit of play, and then you actually want to start pulling your clutch in pretty far out so that it fully disengages between shifts. And again, I've also set, you can set where your clutch, the interaction starts right here, and you can also set where your lever is in this adjustment. So I have those all set up, so the controls are really finished up at this time, and they look good. I'm going to just go over one more place where you have clutch adjustment, and that is here. If you run out of adjustment up top, you can also loosen these up and move this back or forth to set your clutch cable tension. And that has been done, and I've test driven it, and the bike runs great. On this bike, there are a couple things that we need to check that are located underneath the seat. The first of them is the rear brake fluid reservoir, and I'm not sure how well this films, but I have checked. I've actually taken this cap off and checked to see you want your fluid level basically right at the bottom level of the dark part here. And it is, the fluid level is there, and it's also clean looking, very clear. So that looks good. And in checking the battery, I tightened these down just to make sure they have good connection. Everything is solidly mounted here. It does have the battery tender added already. Okay, the next thing we're doing is checking the coolant level. And with the bike upright and level, it should be closer to the top line here. And so what I'm going to do is add a little bit of coolant here. Now this coolant reservoir, there's a panel that goes right here. There's a bolt that undoes, and then you just work the panel out of these little grommets, kind of pop it out of those and then rotate it a little bit forward, and it comes right off. So I've already taken that off. I've already got a clean funnel waiting to put some coolant in. So I'm going to add that. I'll put the camera down here for a second, but I'm going to add the coolant up to the full level. And this bike actually specifies to check this cold. So the bike has not been started up yet. And I'm going to fill that up, and then I'll film what it should look like when it's at the full level. All right, that is filled up exactly to the line, and that looks perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and remount the cover. With the bike fully warmed up, I am checking to see that my cooling fan turns on, and I can feel the air coming out, and I can actually see the blade spinning right in there. And we want to make sure it turns on, and then it turns back off. And it is just turned back off. So that is great. All right, the next thing we're going to check is the lights. I like to do this with the bike running. We can see that the running lights work on this bike. This is the low beam. The fog lights work. And we can see that the high beam works. You can see that the turn signals on the left side of the bike work, and the right side. And we'll move around to the back of the bike. So I can see that the turn signal on the left side works. I can also see that my LED running light in the rear is working. That's the foot brake, that works. And that's a handbrake. And the handbrake works. And we'll just check this other turn signal. That turn signal works. And we finally will check the license plate light right here, and that's not working. So I'm going to replace that bulb. And in doing some research, that's a little E6 bulb. So I'll run to the parts store and grab that and put that in. It's time to check the charging system. I have my multimeter set to 20 volts voltage DC. And I am going to go ahead and put the prongs into my battery tender lead. The black one is always the exposed one. I'm going to do this with the bike fully up to temperature. So that's at idle, which is perfect. Now that the bike is warmed up, I'll show you how to do the oil and filter change. It's honestly super easy on this bike. This cover on the left side of the motor, it'll make it just a little bit easier to get to the oil filter if you remove that. And there's the two bolts here, and there's also a tiny bolt under here. Unfortunately, it's a smaller head size than the upper two, but still shouldn't take us but a second to pop that off, and then we'll have easy access to the oil filter and to the drain plug. Okay, once that cover is removed, man, this thing is easily accessible. Here's your oil filter. So you would just spin that off. Here's your drain plug. It's a 17mm drain plug. Pop that off. You'll also, when you do this, you'll want to check that this crush washer, you can see it just behind the drain bolt here. You want to make sure the crush washer is in good shape. And if not, you want to replace that. I just have done the oil change in this bike, and so I'm not going to go through the entire procedure of doing that. But with the oil and filter change, it takes 4 quarts of oil. I will go ahead and walk around the bike and show you where to put the fresh oil in the bike once the new oil filter and drain plug has been reinstalled after draining the oil. Okay, this is the opposite side of the engine, and we have the oil fill plug here. And so you just remove that, put a clean funnel in, and like I say, you want to use motorcycle specific 10W40 motor oil. The next thing we're going to do is you can check your level after you have run the bike for a little bit and let it settle. It should be right at the high mark there when it's upright, and it is. Everything looks good. So that is really a quick and easy oil change to do. One of the things that makes this bike fantastic service-wise is this handy center stand. Not only is the bike super easy to put up on there, but it just makes maintenance on the bike super easy. Tire changes super easy, and that's a great feature. I wish all bikes came with that. So there you have it. That is how to service Kawasaki's 2015 Versys 1000 LT. And this is the first time I've serviced one of these, and I'll tell you what, and it's super easy to service. I was very impressed. Thoughtful touches. I love the fact that it's got the center stand on it. That made it super easy. When you check the final oil level, you should check it on a level surface and just standing the bike upright, and it should be at the full mark. I checked it that way, and I also checked it with the bike on the center stand. And if there is a difference in the way that the oil level shows up, it's not drastic, but the correct way to do it is to check it when it's not on the center stand but upright. When I purchased this bike, I know that it has a new air filter just installed, and I also know that it has new spark plugs that were installed recently. So I'm not going to get into that service today, but you know, every time I change the oil in a motorcycle, regardless of brand, whatever, this is the same checklist that I go through, and it really allows me, between test driving the bike and measuring everything and looking at everything, it really ensures that the bike is safe to ride. So some of the items on this list, like checking your tire pressures, those should be done on a weekly, if not daily basis, and that's more frequent. But regardless, every time I change the oil and filter in a bike, I do this complete service. And that way, if something is amiss, I catch it early. I don't have to wait till I go to the inspection station and have somebody tell me, oh, you know, your tail lights are out and, you know, nobody can see you braking. That would be a very dangerous condition. And like I say, when you check these systems on a regular basis, your bike is safer to ride. I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.